Hey everybody, welcome back. Marcus Graves back again, this time with a spoiler breakdown for Us. Now let's not beat around the bush. We all know what we're going to be talking about here, right? The ending. We gotta talk about the ending. We need to go back and kind of see how things were set up to get to that climax. From the very beginning, Jordan conveys... Jordan, like I know the man. Jordan Peele already conveys who Addie is, because when she's telling her story about the funhouse mirrors and seeing the girl, her reflection, you see her body, her face is in shadow. The first time that we see Red, when the tethers arrive, her face is in shadow. Already he has shown us who Addie is. And remember the fact that both of them, the shadow and the real, both had shadows. Just keep that in mind. The film conveys that the tethers can't speak. We see them only perform very simple vocalizations. If they need to be directed, you know, that whole thing that she did to make the girl run after Zora? Yes, Zora. Okay. I've still only seen it once at the time of this recording. Even with that little cue, with these vocalizations and all these things that are different with the tethers, Red is able to speak. Of course, her speech is strained due to the strangulation at the hands of Addie, we find out later. But this foreshadows that Red is the original Addie. Because out of all the vocalizers, she's the one that can at least form sentences. And conversely, Addie shows that the tethers can eventually learn speech, behavior, cultural, social norms, all these things. And we see other tethers trying to do that as they are trying to assimilate into the lives of their counterparts. They'll try to do the same thing that their real counterparts are doing, such as pushing the glasses up and the fire and the moving of the hand and things of that nature. Which brings me to my next point. 2 bodies, 1 soul. This is something that Red says to Addie later on in the film. The film conveys as the tethers are trying to assimilate into the lives of their counterparts. I think it should be remembered that even though they're trying to assimilate, they're not trying to become their counterparts. They're trying to replace their counterparts. Well, Marcus, what's the difference? The difference is in the fact that they are their counterparts just without trained or refined motor functions, cultural norms, so on and so forth. For example, look at Red and Addie. They both seek familial peace. At the very opening of the film, it's conveyed that Addie's parents are in a very contentious and constantly antagonistic relationship. And we see her watching her parents and then looking over to the side and seeing the serene and joyful relationships that other adults are enjoying. She longs for that. That's what she wants. She wants the peace. She wants the wholeness instead of the fractured relationship. Unity is also at the forefront of Red's mind because we see her watching the Hands Across America infomercial. She desires that because she sees the fractured relationship that her parents have, and she doesn't want that. She wants unity. She wants the peace there. Meanwhile, in the shadows, see what I did there? Addie sees the state that she and the rest of the tethers are in, and she longs for the real world and not the copy that she is living amongst here, where there is no sort of affection, there is no sort of relationship, there is no relationship. The only relationship is to their tethers. There is no relationship between the tethers themselves. Both of them long for unity and wholeness. Red finds it in unifying the tethers. Addie finds it in building a family of her own that is together. And both are willing to kill people for that unity. Both of them share a bitterness of being trapped and confined in a fractured relationship for Red at the beginning of the film, and in the tunnels for Addie at the beginning of the film. And for Red, eventually that bitterness continues to fester because she's been trapped in that tunnel for years, having had her life stolen by her tether. Both will come to the conclusion to violently break out of the situations that they're in, and both will find their solace and family in the other's world. This harmonious dichotomy, if we can call it that, is exemplified in Jason's picture that he draws of the 1111 man. One person with 2 opposite hands, one clean, one bloody. 2 bodies, 1 soul, 2 aspects of the same being. Notice the imagery after Addie kills Red and saves Jason. She says, "Hey, it's me. It's all right, it's me." Her left hand is clean. The one that she's showing to Jason saying it's me is bloody. She has become the sole one by that point in the film, by the end of that film. Little digression here. Did you notice how, as the film progressed, Addie started to devolve back into her tether behavior? She showed no hesitation or qualms about killing. Her movement started to become more erratic and imprecise. How she laughed and how she spoke, particularly after she killed Red, became more stilted. I'm thinking of, be careful. You know, at the beginning when we see Red do that, and then at the very end, after Addie screams and then goes, so you see that de-evolution back into who she originally was after she's trained herself to become part of the real. Now, the final sequence. I want to go back and go over Jason and Pluto and that whole dynamic before going forth with the final sequence and breaking that down. As I've stated before, all the tethers share a oneness. 2 bodies, 1 soul. Jason and Pluto, of course, are no exception. Their fascination with fire, their obsession with masks and the covering of themselves, whether it be emotionally or, in the case of Pluto, for physical purposes. So at the end, was Jason Pluto? Well, 1, Pluto was dead, because we saw with the whole outstretched arms and everything, and they back up, he backs up into the fire. Boy's dead. But more importantly, once again, 2 bodies, 1 soul. It doesn't matter who it was, as once again stated with Addie, how they desire the same things, maybe different situations, but they all are tethered together. They share the same emotions, they share the same motivations, even if that motivation takes them into different places. They share the same motivation. So was Jason Pluto? No, Jason was Jason, but the thing is, Pluto was also Jason. And Jason is also Pluto. The pulling down of his mask after he stared intently at his mother, he kind of gave his mother that, a little side eye, like, bitch, he kind of gave his mom that side eye. She smiles at him and he pulls his mask down. This pulling down of his mask conveys the inconsequential nature of it. It doesn't matter to the character and it doesn't matter to the overall narrative. For the character, this is the mom that raised me. This is the mom that came and saved me. It doesn't matter. To their overall narrative, Red and Addie are the same, doing the exact same things. Once again, 2 roads, same objectives, same motivations. Addie had the close relationship with Jason, stay close to me and I'll keep you safe. Red had the same one with Pluto, where they are all together. It's the same, so it doesn't matter. More to the point, the final scene conveys that both Red and Addie got exactly what they wanted. Red got the unity that she sought for the world, as the tethers, excluding Addie's family of course, as all the tethers have now killed their doppelgangers and they have taken over the world completely free, unshackled, untethered. Red got exactly what she wanted. She didn't get everything that she wanted. She wanted to get her life back, but I guess you can't get everything that you want. But basically, what Red was looking for, that unity, that wholeness, she found kindred spirits in the tethers. They're unified. They are together. This is their world now. The only ones who are not shadows, other than the fact that Addie is one, but you know what I mean. The only ones who are not shadows are Addie's family. Red got exactly what she wanted. Addie also got everything that she wanted. She wanted a real family of her own. She built that. Red threatened that. She killed whoever threatened that. All her goal was to save her family. She didn't really like Elizabeth Moss's family anyway. Doesn't care about them. Doesn't care about anybody else, which is why they were just driving through the bodies. Doesn't care about any of it. Is her family safe? Is what she built in the real world safe? Mission accomplished. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that the tethers that she grew up with are out and free and together. It doesn't matter that the world as everybody knows it is that, well, the world as they know, once again, everybody's dead. The world as they know it is completely done and destroyed. I saved my family. So that final shot as Jordan Peele directs it with the tracking Addie's car, and then eventually it veers off into the road and it starts to pan up and you see for miles and miles, and it goes to China, and does it go to China? I can't remember now, I guess. Or was I thinking that it would go to China? I can't remember. But basically, you know what I mean. It pans up and you see for miles across the entire world, all of them holding hands, the tethers holding hands together. Addie's going her way, they're going their way. And in a very morbid way, everybody got the unity that they sought. Before I end this video, I do want to get into a couple things that I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, some limitations of the film. In terms of my frame rating for the film, still a full frame film, just, you know, with some limitations. I'm going to get into some of those limitations now because, like I said, it's kind of spoilery, but this is the forum to do so. There are tunnels, subway systems all throughout the world, some of which their purposes are not even known. This is obviously to set up the element of how all of this can go on under everybody's nose, literally under everybody's nose. That's all well and good. The thing that's kind of limiting about that is when you start the film that way, placing it there puts more of a narrative impact on it than actually what happened in the film. Am I articulating myself right? Does that make any sense? In the sense of, like, because that was the first thing you started us off with, it seemed like it would have had more narrative impact as the film went on. It doesn't seem to. It seems to only be there to explain, oh, by the way, this is how everything happened, but let's continue on. It didn't have a lot of narrative impact, so it seems ill-fitting that it would be put at the very beginning to open the story. The only time the tunnels actually come up within the narrative of the story itself, once again, other than being them going down into the tunnels, is when they were on the beach. Zora tells Jason, hey, stop digging those tunnels, what are you doing? But then, once again, it's just discarded. If you were going to have it in somewhere where you could point to it and say, hey, this explains that, but not to give it as much narrative impact as opening your film with it. Remember that whole scene where Zora's in the car and she's talking about the government and she's saying, you know, the government uses the water to try to control people, right? And in that you could say, give the character this dialogue. Hey, you know that the government puts stuff in the water to try to control us, right? The government does all types of shady shit. Zora, what you cursing and everything like that? What? I'm just saying the government does all types of stuff. They're digging tunnels and subways, using subway systems. I mean, all types of stuff that I'm sure we don't even know about. Something to that effect, you know, where you convey that, hey, yes, they already mentioned that this is the possibility because the government does shady shit because it's the government, you know. Speaking of Zora's dialogue in there, if you've seen my non-spoiler review, I mentioned a line of dialogue by a character that serves the overall plot, but doesn't serve the character. That's exactly the dialogue that I'm talking about. Zora's whole thing about the government using the water to control people. That obviously goes into the whole plot of the film and the fact that this whole thing is because of the government. But that doesn't serve the character because that type of line seems to convey some sort of government conspiracy theorist, but that characteristic is just discarded. There's nothing about her, and once again, I've only seen it once, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm fairly certain that there's no other lines regarding anything about the government, any type of conspiracy, any type of resistance to anything governmental, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. So it serves the plot, it doesn't serve the character, because why is the character even saying it? If that was part of her characteristic, that she's a government conspiracy theorist, fine. But because she's not, what is driving this character to say that line of dialogue? Jumping off from there to go into odd characterizations, it seemed odd that the family, after going with Elizabeth Moss's family, I mean, yes, they conveyed that none of them were really too fond of Elizabeth Moss's family. They've seen them for years now, they've hung out with them, but they're not really, like, close. They're just kind of like a family that they always vacation around and everything is just, you know, so they've conveyed that they don't really have a whole lot of love lost for the family. It did seem odd that the characters were so nonchalant, amusing as it was, so nonchalant around their dead bodies. Not the tethers, but the actual family that they would hang out with. But if you want to say that that conveys characteristics about the children of maybe being emotionally distant or unempathetic or whatever the case may be, that's fine, that could possibly be there. Possibly because when Jeremiah 11:11 man, which another little digression, I'm sure some of you have looked up Jeremiah 11:11 now, which is about God bringing disaster upon people. I know some translations say evil. That's a translation issue. It truly means disaster, calamity befalling these people, which is why I worded my non-spoiler summary that way, that disaster comes upon them. Once again, I digress. But when they see Jeremiah 11:11 man being loaded into the ambulance, they go rush to see what's going on, trying to be nosy, trying to see what's going on. And the father says, hey, don't look. So even if you're conveying with that the kids have a fascination with death, let's say, and we know that Addie, as she's devolving into her shadowy ways, again, that she wouldn't even be thinking about that. Why wouldn't the father, who earlier said, hey, don't look, be so nonchalant with them chilling here? Once again, amusing as it is, it just seemed discrepant to the characters. And one more thing before I wrap this video up. Another limiting factor about this story, the rules of the tethers. There are moments where they seem compelled to do exactly what their counterparts are doing. Now, you could say that they're mimicking, and that's very possible with the glasses and everything, that they're mimicking their counterparts in order to more assimilate into being them. But then you get into things like they're nowhere near the real counterparts, like when Addie is at the fair with her parents and the father gives her the Thriller shirt. Meanwhile, the tether father is like, and whenever the real person moved, they moved. And then Jason, when he has his arms outstretched, backs up. Pluto does the same thing. But there are other times where they're kind of doing their own separate things. The limiting aspect comes into play in that what then really decides when they are compelled to move the same way and when they're not compelled to move the same way, other than the plot of this film. And you could say, well, Marcus, what's wrong with that? The issue is the fact that what are the rules of the tethers then? If the rule is that they are compelled to do whatever the real people do, which I understand why you couldn't do that, because if they're doing what their counterparts are doing, there is no story, they're not attacking them. But then if you're saying that they're completely separate from them and can, even though they are the same being, can work autonomously, then why do things like Jason backing up so that Pluto backs into the fire work? Why are the people around in the basement doing the exact same thing that they're doing up in the fair with their, you know what I mean? Now you have discrepant rules, which, yes, is a limiting factor. Now, once again, I have said in my non-spoiler review that this is a full-frame film. Overall dynamic film with a few limitations. This does take away from the dynamics of the film, but it doesn't take away from the dynamics of the film as a whole, I'm just saying that there are issues. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're so inclined. Check out my channel for all my other content that I have on there, my short film yin and yang, reactions, breakdowns, all that good stuff that's on there. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.